about the only time we got under attack when the Germans are trying to ram us because they said they didn't do so well in their training, and what we had started, not our crew, but some of the old timers, said they would try to mimic a conversation between Hitler and Goring, asking Goring, "Was ist los, mein Luftwaffe?" Yeah, after that, Goring would reply, "Nix ist los, alles kaputt." No good, because our fighters were shooting them out of the air, and we had such good fighters. Once we got the drop tanks, they could go the whole way to the target and back, and if they could keep on, others would come out to replace those that were getting ready to turn and return back. So it got very exciting. The crews and the fighters were getting better, and so were the 17s and the 24s. We liked the 17 because almost all systems were electrically operated. The ball turret, the chin turret, and all these. Whereas on the B-24 it was all hydraulic. We said that's a plumber's nightmare. We didn't like them. But they could carry a bigger load than B-17 because it was a newer airplane. And I was up to Boeing, Seattle, after the war for the 50th anniversary of the B-17. I think the first one was built in '35, so they had a lot of time, but they kept changing things. A long time ago, they never had the chin turret on it, but they had single turret guns, and you see that on some pictures. But you'll see the chin turret and the top turret and the tail, they all had the double guns, and they had a better chance. Most of the time, the two turrets, if it was going to be a credit for getting a fighter, because they had a computing sight, they got the credit. But those single guys on the single engines, single guns, we had to, our sight, I don't think I have any pictures with it, it would have a tip out there, and then the ones as you come back here, it'd have 1, 2, 3 circles on them, and you had to lead them. And every 5th shell that went out was a tracer, and you could see where your shell was going. You got them up to the meat, hot doggy. But I never did have any, never got credit for any, but I scared myself.
What were your ground camps like? Like when you were out flying, were you guys, where were you staying?
Each, they had crew barracks, and they had officer barracks. Officers were always separated, and then the crew barracks was over here, and you'd have, most of the time we were taking over a British field, and that's what Poddington was. It had been a British field, but then the U.S. came in and said they needed more fields, and they kept moving in because, you can imagine, we were having these 1,000-plane raids, and we needed more fields. And the British, they were going mostly by single airplanes, and they would have very little fighter cover. And they said, "You're crazy, you're going up there and it's
in a huge group like that.
Daylight, and they see you, we knock you down." Well, we did lose quite a few fighters, or bombers. Like the time we worked at Schweinfurt, they lost 60 airplanes. That's,
wow, that's a lot of people, yeah.
10 airplanes, 10 people in each one. But then everything started improving, and our training and our responses, and we didn't lose as many. We were getting good fighter cover, and of course they were improving too. That was about it.
Did you know a lot of people who died in the Air Corps?
Well, that airplane picture up there was from Mel Durst, who lived just 4 doors, 5 doors down the street here. I met him on the golf course. I was wearing a B-17 hat, and his friend was saying, "Boy, wait till the other guy gets here." He was shot down. He was a prisoner of war for a while, and they had to move him from one position to another camp. And I just wondered, so, "Did you ever get to Frankfurt?" Because he was close to Frankfurt. And he says, you did one hell of a job. And I said, what do you mean? Well, they marched us from one camp to another because we were hitting the camps and they could escape. And we, somewhere here, I have my escape maps. They were on cloth, and the British was a sort of a stiff cloth, and the Americans almost a silk. And you'd have all this. Thank God they give you a magnifying glass in your escape kit, so you could read the map. And you got a pencil with a clip on it. And it was a compass, and you had another compass, and I still have mine that you hook onto your jacket. And my wife was unhappy because I threw the jacket away. Her wristlets were worn out. I say peekaboo. But the one thing that really saved us, I think, was the fact that we, see, if you were flying, you'd have an oxygen mask. It was like that. I had frostbite because I was an open waist one, and then later on they had a closable window. Then they put a solid one, and the picture up there has a solid one, and the gun would protrude through it. Fortunately, it didn't break the window. But thank God they put the rebar around the areas so that you wouldn't shoot your own tail or elevator or things like that off.
Would it get really cold inside the airplane? It sounds like it.
Oh, it'd get down about 40 degrees below zero.
Oh. That would, wow.
Like
That's some cold weather.
Electric
Well,
suit.
see, that's what you, well, you'll get that on that piece right up here. It tells you about that.
And did you ever wish you were a ground soldier at any point? Because I can imagine like being in a closed space like that. You must have had to trust the pilot a lot and your crew members. And
We have complete faith in the pilot, but he wanted to know that we could land the airplane or take it off. I went, huh, I know what to do. And he says, what's that? Well, before, while we were in training in Rapid City, I had my turn,